Part 17. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 161. Melview, Shiki's Lair. Orgrim was lying on the sun lounger in the courtyard at this time. Some time had passed since the battle with Newgate and others. The heat in the newspaper has almost dissipated. Orgrim didn't know it, but Roger now regretted not inviting him aboard the ship more sincerely. I don't know what happened to Kaido's brain, because he jumped off the empty island, crying and shouting, and committed suicide. But even if he knew, Orgrim probably wouldn't take it seriously. Didn't that guy commit suicide too many times? I haven't seen him die either. In short, it's just showing off. Orgrim's injury is now in a state of recovery, almost back to his peak condition. This terrifying self-healing power is truly enviable. It's a good thing that Roger doesn't know much about his physical fitness, otherwise he would probably cry with envy. If I had your physical fitness, would I still be in such a hurry? Just when Orgrim was blowing a little wind and basking in the sun, Beckman walked in, and after seeing Orgrim's lazy figure, he shook his head helplessly. Then Beckman asked with a smile, "Didn't I hear that you are in retreat? Digesting the gains from the battle that day? What is going on? Lazy and sunbathing?" Orgrim said confidently, "I am in retreat. Silently digesting the gains. As you know, I was seriously injured and it is difficult to move. The doctor said that I should get more sun to strengthen my immunity and so on. So what you see now is reasonable." "Which doctor said that?" Beckman asked with a smile. "Dr. Indigo," Orgrim said casually. "Indigo is a scientist, okay. Not a doctor at all," Beckman complained. "Why do you care so much? After all, they are educated people. We reckless people just have to be obedient," Orgrim said in a confused way. "You are wrong, you are the only one who is reckless, and I, Beckman, am also a cultured person." Beckman waved his hand and teased. After Orgrim chatted with Beckman for a while, he asked, "How is it, boss?" Shiji agreed. "Well, he asked me to see how you are doing. If it's good, he can leave at any time. After all, he has nothing to do and is in a good mood recently," Beckman said with a smile. "Yeah? That would be great." Orgrim sat up suddenly when he heard this. He didn't look like he was sick. "Speaking of which, when you were on Gaia Island, you seemed to be very concerned about Sky Island. Why?" Beckman asked curiously. "Have you heard of the adventure stories of Wenbrand Rolando?" Orgrim asked directly. "Of course I have heard of the great adventurer 400 years ago, who later became a great liar due to the problems in the Golden Land." Beckman nodded and said. "Yes, that's the guy." Orgrim hasn't finished speaking yet. Beckman seemed to have thought of something and asked in surprise, "You don't mean to say that you are going to find the land of gold, right? Isn't that a scam?" "What kind of scam is not a scam? According to my inference, the Golden Land must exist. Rolando is not a fool. If he insists on saying this, he will be ruined and beheaded." Orgrim waved his hand and said very seriously. "What do you mean, on an empty island?" Beckman asked with a frown. "Well, that's right, now the mainstream in the sea, in other words, people who believe in the land of gold think that this thing has sunk to the bottom of the sea. However, after hundreds of years of searching and salvaging, no important information or evidence has been found." Orgrim said softly. "This is also the reason why more and more people think Rolando is a liar, isn't it?" Beckman nodded and responded. "However, do you still remember the soaring sea current that never appeared when we were on Gaia Island?" Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. Beckman thought for a moment, and then said with a flash of light in his eyes, "You mean, the land of gold was washed into the sky? Gee, ha 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 ha, you are really smart, you can tell with just one point." Orgrim laughed. "You really have a big brain, are you sure?" asked Beckman. "Well, I'm pretty sure. Besides, It doesn't matter even if this doesn't happen. We haven't been to Sky Island anyway, so we just went on vacation with Shiji. Orgrim said very casually. Beckman looked at the ground under his feet, and then asked, aren't we on an empty island? When he was on Gaia Island, Beckman still doubted the existence of Sky Island. It wasn't until he joined Shiji's staff and heard Shiji personally confirm it that Beckman truly believed it. Yukong Island. That's it? Orgrim was stunned for a moment, then said with a smile, this is at best a floating island. We are only 3,000 or 2,000 meters away from the sea, and the real empty island is over 10,000 meters away, where there are cloud-like sea areas called the White Sea and the White Sea. Beckman fantasized longingly, and then asked even more strangely, how do you know? I am a cultured person, different from you, a reckless man. Orgrim showed his muscles and mocked. I believe you, ghost, Beckman cursed. Gee, ha 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 ha, that's it? When I was a child, I got a captain's logbook, which my father brought back from the sea. It was later thrown away. It recorded some news about the empty island. Orgrim said casually. Beckman was stunned for a moment, but he didn't suspect anything. Although they were neighbors who grew up together, they didn't depend on each other at that time. They each had families, and there were some things he didn't know. It's normal. And their parents often go out to sea to hunt whales. It's normal to occasionally bring back some weird things. Beckman himself has had this experience. Is that so? Beckman nodded and said softly. Seeing that he believed it, Orgrim continued to talk nonsense. By the way, I didn't understand it when I was a child. When I was on Gaia Island, I heard the legend of Sky Island, so I remembered it. Issues. What's the matter? Beckman also became interested and asked curiously. Do you know about the thunder fruit? The natural one. Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. Beckman nodded and said, I saw it in Shiji's devil fruit illustrated book earlier. It is called the strongest devil fruit. Eat it, the thunder fruit will have invincible power. What? Yes, it may not be called the strongest or invincible, but the thunder fruit is not much different. It is natural type and transforms into thunder and lightning. You can imagine how abnormal it is. Orgrim nodded and said. Beckman imagined for a while, if he really had this ability, he would indeed be invincible. But soon, he asked again, why did you suddenly mention the thunder fruit? Did you mean to say that the thing is on the Sky Island? Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then slapped Baker on it. On man's shoulder, he said, Brother Niobe, you've learned how to draw inferences from one instance. Beckman looked at Orgrim in surprise and asked, really? I don't know if it's true or not, but the diary said that the thunder fruit was probably on an empty island called Baika. However, they encountered other dangers at that time and did not look for it. Later they returned. It's a pity that I won't go to Sky Island anymore, Orgrim said with a smile. It took me a long time. Is it a story? Beckman complained helplessly. But think about it, the thunder fruit must be something that many big forces are trying to find, right? Orgrim asked. Yes, I heard that some people under Shiji were also looking for this thing. They searched for many years with no results, and were later dismissed by Shiji. Beckman nodded and said. Yes, no one in the Navy, world government, pirates, or those weird guys in the underground dark world wants to find the thunder fruit. But in the end, more than 100 years have passed since the last time a person with the thunder fruit ability appeared. This ability still does not appear in the sea, so, Orgrim said this. Beckman caught the words, his eyes lit up, and he said, so, do you think it is possible that the thunder fruit is not in the sea at all, but in the sky? Yes, at least that's what the story said. When I think about it carefully, this possibility is not small. The captain's diary is for himself after all. There is no need to lie to himself, right? Orgrim said in a deep voice. After a slight pause, Orgrim continued, so, I have two goals when I go to Sky Island this time. The first one is to find the land of gold and seize the land. Endless gold. The second one is to find the thunder fruit. You have a really big appetite. Beckman said, smacking his lips. Gee ha 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 ha, if it comes to the land of gold, I can give it to Shiji to make him rich or something, but I must get the thunder fruit. The conditions Shiji promised me before can be used just right. Orgrim laughed and said. There is nothing in the golden land. Orgrim is now working under Shiji, enjoying a good life without spending any money. This huge wealth can be left to Shiji to make money. He has nothing to do with it. I don't care. Anyway, I gave it to Shiji, and Shiji probably won't be able to spend it all. It won't be long before he goes to the city to further his studies. By then, won't he fall into the hands of Orgrim? So in the spirit of respecting the elderly as a child, Orgrim thought it was better to let Shiki have fun. And without Shiki's ability, Orgrim didn't have the means to take away all the golden land. But the thunder fruit is different. You must hold the thunder fruit in your own hands. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 162. On Shiji's flagship, Orgrim was currently in the cabin, fiddling with something in his hands. Shiji, the big boss, was sitting on his throne, seeming to be thinking about something. Their ship is now heading to the White Sea. Orgrim knew little about Sky Island, but Shiki knew it very well. As a user with the power of Piao Piao fruit, Shiji went to Sky Island just like going shopping. He couldn't count the number of times. The entire Bibai Sea area, covering the sky above the world, is not particularly complete and exists piece by piece. There are also very special channel connections between each piece. Therefore, it can be said that the White Sea is scattered over the world. The coverage rate of Sky Islands is not low either. According to Shiji, there are Sky Islands in the skies above all major sea areas around the world, including the North Sea, the West Sea, the East China Sea, the South China Sea, the first half of the Great Root, and the New World. This is pretty much what Orgrim guessed. Except for a few that are fixed in a certain area, most of these empty islands are constantly moving with the flow of the White Sea. Yes, the White Sea is one piece and moves slowly. It feels really similar to clouds. Land of gold, what you said does make sense. Why didn't I think of it before? Above Gaia Island is Angel Island, which I have also been to. It is one of the few empty islands that can be fixed in a certain area, but when I went there, I didn't find any gold on it. After Shiji thought about it for a while, he said strangely. Boss Shiji, have you conducted a thorough search and investigation? Orgrim asked, holding a few shells in his hand and fiddling with them. Shiji shook his head, then smiled and said, that's true. Angel Island is nothing special. It seems that some 100-year war has been going on. I wasn't interested in those boring wars either, so I left after supplying some supplies. Ah, I know this. I mentioned in my diary that it is very possible that those who fought with the people on Angel Island were the Sandians 400 years ago. Orgrim's eyes lit up and he spoke. Shiji frowned slightly, thinking that this was really the case. If you put it this way, is it really possible that the land of gold is on an empty island? Then how many billions did I miss back then? Even hundreds of billions. No, we have to recover these losses this time. Thinking of this, Shiji smiled and said, if there really is a land of gold, are you sure you want to hand it over to me? That's not a small number. According to the legend that an entire city is made of gold, it is necessary to say less. What about the value of hundreds of billions of Baileys? Do you understand what this concept is? Of course I understand. I can use this number to buy a small country, Orgrim said with a smile. Then without waiting for Shiji to speak, Orgrim continued, but under your command, Boss Shiji, I have no shortage of food and drink. I have everything I need, so not short of money. At this point, Orgrim's aura of a rich man flashed across his body, and then he raised his chin and said, I, Orgrim, have never touched money, and I have no interest in money. When I am happiest, the days when I used to go out to sea to hunt whales and earn 1 or 200,000 belly each time. Shiji was shocked at this time. I didn't ask you so much. If you are not interested in money, what does it have to do with me? And what the hell is whaling? Of course, Shiji didn't believe a word of what Orgrim said. After Orgrim said these words, he felt very comfortable all over. Oh, I saw the richest man showing off like this in my last life, and I, Orgrim, can also show off like this in this life. Since you really plan this way, if you find the land of gold, I won't be polite to you, Shiki smiled and said. Then he said with a headache, well, that guy Indigo doesn't care about my difficulties at all. He asks me for tens of billions of dollars every year. Scientific research is the most expensive thing. After a slight pause, Shiji breathed a sigh of relief and said, fortunately, maybe in 2 years, we will be on the right track. Everything is difficult at the beginning, and then there will be no need to invest so much. Grim nodded understandingly. Indeed, scientific research is a bottomless pit, and only a top-notch person like Shiji can do it successfully. Before Orgrim had not joined Shiji's banner, it would have been pretty good to be able to support the 2,000 people under his command just by relying on the income from being a pirate. Orgrim used to think that just being a pirate and burning, killing and looting would be enough. Now I find that if you want to become bigger and stronger, you still need to have a stable source of income and a steady stream of blood transfusions. Otherwise, just take the elite route, like Roger or Shanks, with one ship and a few people. It doesn't cost much to eat and drink, and you can still be cool. And if you want to be like Kaido, Charlotte Lingling, Shiji, and Whitebeard, you have to have a way. Fortunately, Shiji is now carrying the flag, so Orgrim doesn't have to worry about these things. But speaking of it, Shiki and Whitebeard are obviously third-rate players when it comes to making money, far behind Charlotte Lingling and Kaido. Kaido later took over Wano country and built a place like a processing factory. Secretly, he started doing business with the world government and became prosperous. Charlotte Lingling's 10,000 Kingdoms Totland is also quite good and very wealthy. On the other hand, the Whitebeard pirates only charge a protection fee, and Newgate has no money to do charity. As for Shiji, it is still the same now. He relies on his reputation as a pirate to steal money, collect donations from his independent captains every year, or go to some wealthy countries to collect protection fees and so on. The means are very low. Because of this, he valued the huge wealth brought by this golden land even more. Although Orgrim felt that there was a lot of room for improvement in Shiki's practices, he did not want to participate at all. After Shiki went to Impelton for further training, I would take over and make arrangements based on the actual situation. Otherwise, the more you do now, the more likely you will be used as a wedding dress for others in the future. The land of gold is given to you, Boss Shiji, but you can't snatch the thunder fruit from me. This is what you promised. Orgrim reminded him again while fidgeting with the shell in his hand. Shiji waved his hand impatiently and said, I know, do you need to mention it so many times? I have promised you anything, which one of you have I ever regretted? Not really, Orgrim nodded and praised. Shiji was shocked when he heard the news about the thunder fruit from Orgrim. Of course, he was very interested in that thing. But soon, Orgrim used the incident with the Whitebeard pirates to make a condition with him, and Shiji finally agreed. In fact, Shiji's idea was very simple. I'll give you the thunder fruit, and you can go to Orgrim. Who are you training? In the end, they are not my Golden Lion subordinates. It's just you in the middle. Although Shiji feels that Orgrim has made rapid progress, in a short period of time, he wants to challenge him, surpass him, and inherit him. Something like that. That's completely impossible. It will take another 3 to 5 years for such a sign to appear. and it may not be successful. In short, as long as Orgrim works under him, the thunder fruit will be Orgrim's, isn't it also to serve him, Shiji? In addition, he has indeed promised Orgrim's promise, and now it is just a matter of selling face to him, so why cause any unpleasantness? In Shiji's opinion, Orgrim is far more important than the thunder fruit. And, this is just a piece of gossip, and there is no evidence at all. It's hard to say whether the thunder fruit can be found. What's the point of ownership? Just when Shiji was thinking about the futility of all this, he suddenly looked up and saw the shockwave condensed in Orgrim's hand, squeezing the shell. He was stunned for a moment, then his expression changed, and he cursed, "Stop it, that's a volley shell. The impact force stored in you will explode 10 times. Although Orgrim he knew there was such a thing as a platoon shell, but he couldn't remember what it looked like. I just held this thing and thought it was very interesting and could absorb shock waves, so I kept playing with it." When he heard Shiji's words, Orgrim just happened to stuff another shockwave into it, and then the row of shells seemed to crack slightly. The volley shell is said to be the most powerful shell on Sky Island. It can expel 10 times the impact you put into it. Of course, there is an upper limit here, otherwise this shell would be invincible. At this point, it was obvious that Orgrim was messing around and pushing this thing to its maximum limit. A white light flashed in his eyes, and the next second, a powerful impact exploded from Orgrim's hand. Orgrim's whole body was thrown away, and so was Shiji's figure. The entire hall was in chaos, and the throne was blown to pieces. After the shockwave passed, Shiji, with his messy hair, saw that his magnificent palace was blown into a mess by Orgrim, and a big hole was opened on the side of the cabin. His whole mentality collapsed. "Orgrim," Shiji roared angrily. And Orgrim crawled out of the ruins in despair, and said with some embarrassment, "Then what? Forget it, farewell." As soon as he finished speaking, Orgrim turned around and ran, and 2 slashes flew out from behind him. For a moment, Shiji, the huge flagship, boarded the chicken is flying and the dog is jumping. "Isn't it okay to use my golden land to compensate you?" "Not short of money," Orgrim wailed while avoiding the furious Shiji. "Come on, bosses, continue to ravage me, don't pity this delicate flower like me, hand over all the flowers and monthly tickets. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 163. Sky Island Baika. Shiji had been here once many years ago, but he didn't stay much then. This is a small sky island, almost nothing special. At this time, Shiki's huge pirate ship is anchored in Baika's port. But what's a little funny is that there seems to be a big hole in the cabin. Many Baika residents who didn't know what was going on lamented that it was really dangerous for people from Qinghai to come to their empty island. There was a bandage wrapped around Orgrim's chest, and there was a faint trace of blood, and he looked a little embarrassed. Beckman and Neiman were standing next to him. Seeing him like this, they couldn't help but want to laugh. "Okay, you've been pretending for 3 days, hurry up and heal your wound," Beckman joked with a smile. Orgrim asked Neiman in a low voice, "How is it, has boss Shiji calmed down?" Neiman couldn't help but laugh after hearing this, and said, "The Admiral is not so narrow-minded, brother, you don't have to pretend, he's not really angry with you." "Not angry? Not angry, he grabbed me and chopped me twice," Orgrim said as he patted the bandage on his chest. But as soon as he finished speaking, he casually tore off the bandage. There was no knife edge inside, okay. Even the blood had already dried up. It's dark. Yes, Orgrim is doing misfortune. He accidentally blew a big hole in Shiji's flagship, the throne was blown to pieces, and the magnificent hall was a mess. Shiji was angry. He almost died from a cerebral hemorrhage. After being slashed twice by Shiji, Orgrim began to suffer miserably. In front of Shiji, he looked like he was seriously injured and might die at any time. This made Shiji funny again. I'm so angry. He obviously showed mercy on those two swords, and they probably couldn't hit him. It was Orgrim who got in there himself, right? But this bastard still looked like he was about to die. It was simply scoundrel. Just when Orgrim took off the bandage, Shiki walked off the ship. Orgrim looked at the situation and quickly put the bandage back on. Shiki glared at him and said, "That's enough, what else are you pretending to do?" Hey, ha ha ha, Orgrim smiled awkwardly, and then quickly said, "Aren't you afraid that you will get angry and chop me down?" Snort, Shiji snorted coldly, ignored Orgrim and walked a few steps to the port of Baika. At this time, many residents of Baika were also looking at Shiji and the others curiously. Regarding the matters in Qinghai, Kangdao, we know very little about it. Although people from Qinghai occasionally come up, they don't bring much news. Shiji is one of the top figures in the sea. Everyone knows the name of Golden Lion. Can even stop children from crying at night. But on Sky Island, almost no one knows who he is. Baika is a rural place on Sky Island, so Shiji is even less recognized. As the top pirate, Shiji didn't mean to talk nonsense with Baika's people. In the past, when he came here, he didn't even bother to get off the boat, and left as soon as he resupplied. Now he knows that there is probably a thunder fruit here, and of course he must use thunderous means to find it. Come on. Shiji suddenly stamped his feet, and an inexplicable energy spread out from Shiji's feet. Then the entire Baika was affected by the energy of his piao fruit. Without saying anything, Shiji stretched out his hand and wow, the Sky Island of Baika has undergone drastic changes. The ground around the entire island began to rise continuously, like a high wall, surrounding Baika, forming a closed island with only a normal port. Then Shiji the figure flew into the air and said very domineeringly, "From now on, Sky Island Baika will be included under the banner of my Golden Lion, Shiji, and you guys are all my prisoners, Shiji." The people in Baika were all stunned at this time. "What did you say suddenly?" But Shiji had no intention of talking nonsense or explaining to them. He flew in the air, glanced at it, and seemed to have discovered Baika's town. In the center, there was a building like an office building with a very good flag hanging there. A cruel smile appeared on the corner of Shiji's mouth. He raised his hand to face it in the air, and then shook hands violently, folding his palms together. It turned into a fist. The next moment, the ground around the building shook violently, and a huge lion roared out from under the ground. It swallowed the building in one bite and destroyed it directly. "If you don't surrender, you will die." "All kneel down," Shiji said very domineeringly. "The knowledge and strength of the Sky Island people are rubbish. If they are placed in Qinghai, anyone with some ability can beat them. Not to mention Shiji. Shiji, come up." He first established his power and directly destroyed Baika's ruling class, scaring the Sky Islanders to the point where they all knelt on the ground and did not dare to resist at all. After seeing this scene, Shiji nodded with satisfaction and then landed at the port. "Neiman, you and your people start to control these Sky Island people in Baika and let them work for me. Even if you dig 3 feet into the ground, you still have to find the thunder fruit," Shiji said softly to Neiman. "Yes, Admiral," Neiman responded without hesitation. Looking at her like this, she seemed to be used to it. I guess Shiji had done this before. In fact, it was really like this. Shiji had a lot of flying things in the air. He robbed the islands from the sea, and most of the residents on them became his slave labor force. They were responsible for serving the big plan created by Dr. Indigo. Shiji nodded, then frowned slightly. He frowned and then ordered, "Tell them that everything is easy if they find the thunder fruit. If they don't find the thunder fruit, they will all die." I didn't intend to play with kindness and power at all. Shiji, a ferocious lion, had no mercy for these weak people. Orgrim didn't think there was any problem at all. This is the sea. The strong live and the weak die. And the weak have to serve the strong. What's even worse is that they often can't even choose their own way of death. The law of the jungle is in full force. Just when Niemann was about to leave, Orgrim said again, yes. Come on, Niemann, help me find if there is a little guy named Enelu. If there is, bring him to me. Shiki glanced at Orgrim and said nothing. He was just a little kid. He didn't care at all. Orgrim was his right-hand man. It wasn't a problem for him to be alone. Although Niemann was a little strange, his eldest brother, how did she know that there might be a little guy named Enelu on this island? But she didn't ask any more questions, smiled and said, I know, brother. In the next few days, the entire Baika was like a construction site. All the houses in the town were knocked down. Even the islanders continued to dig 3 meters deep under the foundation, layer by layer. Cause code. If the thunder fruit is not found, they will work in 2 shifts, with a 12-hour rest system, day and night rotation, and no work stoppages. This will make life worse than death for the Sky Islanders of Baika. This short time, in just a few days, several of them died from exhaustion, and many others tried to resist, but their heads were blown off by Niemann. The corpses were hung at the construction site to deter those with evil intentions. Of course, not only Baika's Sky Islanders, but the pirate boys on Shiji's ship were also sent by Shiji to clean up Baika to increase some efficiency. Although they are insignificant, they are still Shiji's people. They are still somewhat taken care of, don't have to be so tired, and most of them are working as supervisors. In this case, there are more than 30,000 people in Baika, all of whom have become Shiji's workers. At this time, Shiji's flagship on the deck, Orgrim was holding juice and sitting on a sun lounger. There were 2 beautiful maids beside him who were fanning him and blowing the wind. It was as if he belonged to this ship. The same as the boss. But Shiji didn't bother to care about him. After all, Orgrim was the second uncle on the ship. Except for Shiji, no one had a higher status than him. And in front of Orgrim, he looked at a little guy who looked to be 13 or 14 years old, nervous, fearing that Orgrim would kill him if he got impatient. Orgrim took a sip of juice and picked up one from the table. The apple was thrown to the little guy. The little guy was in a hurry and didn't catch it. He was so frightened that he quickly crawled to the ground and picked up the fruit from the deck, looking like he didn't know whether he should eat it or not. Gee, ha 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 ha, Orgrim laughed first, and then said, eat it. After hearing what Orgrim said, the little guy took a bite of the apple. Are you an orphan? Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. Yes, the little guy didn't dare to hide it and quickly replied. Called Enel? Orgrim asked again. Yes, Enelu nodded and responded quickly. Why doesn't it feel like it? Orgrim touched his chin and said to himself. In his impression, this guy Enel should be very stinky and very arrogant, but now this little guy is submissive and has no dignity. Dare you say it, you don't have that temperament at all? If it weren't for the huge earlobes, Orgrim would have no characteristics of Enelu at all. But soon, Orgrim realized, maybe before getting the thunder fruit, Enel had a miserable life in Baika. He was often bullied and so on. Otherwise, a normal person would not destroy his hometown after getting the power, right? That's right, Enelu has not obtained the power of the thunder fruit at this time. He is still a little rookie hanging around at the bottom of Baika, and his life is precarious. Perhaps this apple is the best he has eaten in the past few months. Is it something? Precisely because Enel has not become a user with the ability of the thunder fruit, Orgrim is even more convinced that the thunder fruit is in Baika at this time. His current idea is also very simple, he wants to take away the thunder fruit, he will also take Enelu away. If there is a better candidate than him in the future, the thunder fruit will be given to others. If Enelu's performance can also satisfy Orgrim, then it is not a good idea to train him. Question. You can also give him the thunder fruit. But before that, you must first cultivate his loyalty. For a precarious little kid, this shouldn't be difficult, right? From today on, you will follow me. Orgrim first said something to Enelu, and then said to the maid beside him, take him down to clean up. Yes, Lord Orgrim, the maid responded softly, and then took Enel away. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 164. Link is an ordinary Sky Islander living on Baika. His life was originally very ordinary, but the result happened just a few days ago. His life has undergone earth-shaking changes. From Qinghai, a group of dam pirates came. These pirates were extremely powerful. These free people were suddenly reduced to slaves. Now they can only dig around Baika, looking for some thunder fruit. God knows what the thunder fruit is. Those guys said it was a devil fruit, but what is a devil fruit? Fortunately, these slaves each have a blueprint in their hands, and what is drawn on it is the thunder fruit. Just as Link was wielding his hoe, he was smashing the floor tiles in the town. A Qinghai pirate came over, holding a whip in his hand, and swung it hard, hitting Link on the back. Ah! Link fell to the ground in pain, feeling a burning pain in his back. You guys, follow me, go clean up the garbage mountain and look for it carefully, the pirate said with some displeasure. Others were searching in towns and forests. He was assigned a new area to search in the garbage mountain, which made this little pirate very unhappy. But he is just an ordinary person. Tong's pirates belong to the lowest level of existence under Shiji's banner. He can't afford to offend others, so he can only accept this job. But after getting here, he will not be polite to these slaves. With a few whips, it seems that feeling refreshed. Soon, more than 100 Baika Sky Islanders, including Link, were brought to the vicinity of the garbage mountain. This was the dirtiest and messiest place in Baika. About 4 or 5 years ago, since the last businessman responsible for garbage disposal died of illness, no one has been willing to take over this place. Therefore, the garbage mountain is getting bigger and bigger, and the garbage created by tens of thousands of people is constantly being discarded here. Rats and cockroaches are all this filthy creature is entrenched here. From a distance, you can smell the disgusting stench, and flies, mosquitoes, and bed bugs are flying all over the place. If you don't want to be whipped, go in and look for it quickly. I tell you, if you can't find the thunder fruit, don't think about anything else. When Boss Shiji's patience wears off, you will all die, the pirate boy yelled very violently. Link felt like he was suffocating. The stench here was simply painful. He resisted the violent vomiting, took off his clothes, covered his nose, and driven by the whip, he plunged into the garbage pile. Just like that, a few more days passed. Link seemed to have gradually become more proficient in the garbage mountain. The originally pungent smell seemed to be gone now. He couldn't know whether his sense of smell has failed or his body has become accustomed to this originally disgusting odor. His body is full of stinky filth, and his hair has become very greasy, and sewage sometimes flows along the ends of the hair are flowing down. One eye is red and bloodshot. It must be infected with some bacteria. There is a medium-sized gash on the left arm, which was accidentally scratched here. Now it has begun to suppurate. He could still feel pain 2 days ago, but now, he was only numb. Link's movements seemed to have become very sluggish. He habitually took away the garbage on the stinking ditch and glanced at it. I found nothing. Then I put my hand completely into the stinky ditch and began to constantly explore the stinky ditch where I couldn't see what was underneath. Ball, Link touched something round in the stinking ditch, and it seemed a little rough. He didn't think about the thunder fruit. To be honest, Link had been desperate these past 2 days, and he would feel like it from time to time. Do you think about when he will die in this garbage mountain? Even if he dies, no one will care about him, right? In the end, his body will be constantly eaten by rats, bed bugs, and other dirty things. Bite, flies and mosquitoes lay eggs inside his body. It keeps rotting, and finally merges with this garbage mountain. No one will remember it from now on, right? I never thought before that I would end up in such a disgusting and tragic way. How to die? He reached out and took out the stuff in the stinking ditch. It was covered with a layer of greasy and disgusting filth. As soon as he took it out, it exuded an extremely strong odor. This also made Link slightly feeling relieved. It seemed that his nose had not lost its sense of smell. Link reached out and wiped the greasy filth away, wiping off the disgusting stuff, and then saw some green-blue peel exposed underneath. This made Link was startled, as if he thought of something. Then he quickly rubbed the thing on his dirty clothes, wiping away all the greasy dirt. Sure enough, in under this filth, a strange patterned fruit was revealed. There were some lightning patterns on it, and it looked like a big wrinkled watermelon. This is, Link murmured excitedly. Isn't this the thunder fruit recorded on the blueprints sent to them by the pirates? He didn't know what the use of this thunder fruit was, but the pirates undoubtedly valued this thing very much, which also proved that the value of this thing must be quite high. In the past, the clever and despicable Link would definitely have found a way to hide this thing first. Then look for an opportunity to find out what the use of this thing is and what benefits you can get from it. But now, he just wants to hand this thing over to those pirates as soon as possible. He didn't want to struggle in this dirty and filthy garbage for a second. He wanted to find a doctor to treat his infection, his eyes that were almost blinded by bacteria, and his arms that were so suppurated that he could no longer feel pain. At this moment, Link, who originally thought he would die in the garbage mountain, burst out with an unparalleled desire to survive. He wants to live and not die in this disgusting place. Grown-ups! Grown-ups! Link shouted excitedly. I found it, the thunder fruit. Link was holding the thunder fruit while running towards the garbage mountain. He wanted to hand this thing to those damn pirates and end all this nightmare as soon as possible. Orgrim was sitting on Shiji's ship. On the sun lounger on the deck, I was drinking wine happily with a wine glass in my hand. This is Baika's wine, dug out from a noble wine cellar that has been buried for many years. It is indeed very delicious and tastes great. The taste is all excellent. Of course Shiji's people are not just asking them to find Orgrim. Anyone who finds anything valuable has moved it to the ship. It is estimated that they will wait for this once the wave passes. Even if Shiji doesn't kill these hapless Baika people, they will all become paupers. Of course, Orgrim doesn't have a holy heart. After all, he is an evil pirate who likes to blow people's heads. I was faintly laughing. I felt that this matter, from another perspective, might also be a kind of progress. It would reclassify everyone in Baika into the same class. Without the constraints of class, everyone would start from scratch together, each relying on his or her own abilities. How fair would that be? And even if they weren't here, in a few years, this guy Eniro would destroy the entire Baika. Think about it carefully. These pirates, who are some evil parties, they are simply here to save them, the unlucky ones who will be destroyed in the future. What an angel! Orgrim, who was in a very happy mood, couldn't help but smack his lips when he thought of this. After taking a sip of wine, he looked at the deck not far away. There, the little Lolita Sphinx was bullying this little guy Enelu. Ha 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 ha, stand still and don't move. The Sphinx held a gun in his hand and pointed it at the head of Enel. At this time, Enel was standing on the deck, his face was pale, his whole body was shaking, and his head was on top. He was holding an apple. And the Sphinx, far away from him, was playing the game of apple hunting. The Sphinx threw his pistol into the air in a very fancy way, and then gave a very chic pose. Just when she was about to grab the pistol that fell in the air, she fired a bullet handsomely and hit the apple on Anilu's head. Just hearing a bang gunshot, the apple on Anilu's head exploded into pieces. The Sphinx who had just caught the pistol was stunned. "I haven't fired yet." But soon, the Sphinx followed the sound of the gunfire and looked towards the observation tower on the mast. He saw Beckman eating an apple in his hand, and holding a delicate handful in the other hand. A revolver with a faint smoke coming from the muzzle. "Beckman," the Sphinx shouted in displeasure. Then she raised her hand and shot Beckman. There was a pop sound, and the half-bitten apple in Beckman's hand exploded to pieces. Hey, this is very dangerous, you almost hit me in the mouth." Beckman looked at the apple pomace and juice in his hand and said helplessly. "Who asked you to snatch my mother's target?" "That's what I work so hard for," the Sphinx cursed angrily. "I see you are so fancy and don't fight for a long time, I can't help but feel itchy," Beckman said with a smile on his lips. Although the Sphinx is very crazy and fiery, Orgrim and others like this guy very much, as does Beckman, so they often tease this crazy loli who pulls out a gun and fires when she disagrees. Anilu also ran to Orgrim's side in a panic at this time, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Orgrim looked at his somewhat pale face and couldn't help but shake his head and said, "If you don't like playing, just reject her." "I can, refuse?" Anilu asked somewhat unconfidently. Orgrim reached out and picked up a towel from the table, covered it on Anilu's head, and rubbed it randomly to wipe away some of the apple juice. Then he smiled and said, "Of course, as I said, you will be the one I protect from now on." Anilu's eyes flashed with some light, but before he could speak, the Sphinx came over and complained, "Don't teach our well-behaved Anilu bad. Come on, let's go. Put a grape." Hey, okay, don't scare Anilu, go find someone else to play with this," Orgrim said quickly. "Hey, it's so boring. Is there any thunder fruit?" "I have been struggling for half a month," the Sphinx muttered very unhappily. "Gee ha, what are you in a hurry for?" "Boss Shiji is not in a hurry." Orgrim laughed. At this moment, a pirate brother ran over in a panic and said, "Lord Orgrim, we discovered the thunder fruit. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates." Author, Zippo. Chapter 165. Soon, a devil fruit on a tray was delivered to Orgrim and others. Niemann stood next to the little brother holding the tray and said, "Is this it, brother?" Orgrim had clearly remembered the thunder fruit in the devil fruit illustrated book, and the moment he saw this thing, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up, and he put on a smile and said, "Yes, it's this thing, the so-called invincible natural type thunder fruit." As he spoke, Orgrim stretched out his hand to grab this devil fruit. "But I don't know if it's an illusion, but Orgrim always feels that this thunder fruit smells bad." The smell was extraordinary, and he and Beckman could be considered as people who had eaten devil fruit. The taste, I have to say, is like eating shit. Don't ask Orgrim why he knows the taste of shit. It's just fantasy and intuition. He guarantees that he has never eaten shit. Moreover, Orgrim still has 2 devil fruits in his hand, and they also don't have this unusually strong odor. This made Orgrim very confused. Could it be that the natural system smells so bad? How did Kuzan, Sakaski, and Porisalino get away with talking? Or in other words, the more powerful the natural element is, the more stinky it is. The thunder fruit is said to be invincible, he must be the king of stink, right? But just when Orgrim was about to reach out and touch the thunder fruit, Niemann quickly slapped Orgrim's hand away. Orgrim looked at Niemann in confusion, and Niemann said, "Brother, don't you think this thunder fruit stinks?" "Of course I think so, what's wrong?" Orgrim asked a little strangely. This thing was dug out of a mountain of rubbish by a Baika man. It had been buried in a smelly ditch for who knows how many years. It was probably soaked, vomit. At this point, Niemann couldn't help but retched. When Orgrim heard this, he quickly retracted his hand and looked at the thunder fruit, which was stinky to the core, with a strange look. What the hell? If you don't know, forget it, you can still eat it with your eyes closed and your teeth gritted. But if you know this thing, it has been soaked in the smelly ditch of the garbage mountain for who knows how many years, and the smell has soaked into the fruit. Who can still eat this? At this moment, Orgrim felt that even if he did not have the ability to impact the fruit, after getting the thunder fruit, I'm afraid there is also a big psychological shadow on whether I will eat it or not. It makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. In order to become stronger, you have to eat shit, something even more disgusting than shit. I feel like even if I'm not an Esper, I'm still pretty good. Isn't Garp very strong? Orgrim comforted himself. Yes, he felt that he might not be so cruel. After knowing the origin of this fruit, he could still eat the thunder fruit without changing his expression. Orgrim would like to call him as the strongest. Just when Orgrim was thinking about these messy things, the big boss Shiji also came over. He also heard that Orgrim and the others really found the thunder fruit. Of course Shiji was very curious about this most powerful devil fruit that had been lost for more than 100 years. It was one thing to see it in the devil fruit illustrated book, but it was another thing to see it in reality. Shiji casually pushing aside the two little pirates blocking the way, he walked to the tray and frowned slightly. Why did it smell so bad? But he didn't think much about it. Under the stunned expressions of everyone, he gave the thunder fruit to he took it in his hand. He even shook it very casually. Oh! Is this the thunder fruit? Known as the invincible and strongest natural type devil fruit, it's really good. If you eat it, it will open the door to the most powerful person, Shiji said with a smile while shaking the thunder fruit. Then he turned around and took a look, and found that Orgrim and others were all hesitant to speak. Shiji couldn't help but smile. He opened his mouth and said, "Don't make such an expression. I keep my word. Even if I really find this thunder fruit now, I won't snatch it from you. Can't I just play with it for a few times?" As he spoke, Shiji wrinkled his nose again and said, "Why does it smell so bad? Did any of you fart? Do you have any sense of charity?" Orgrim's mouth twitched in embarrassment, and then said, "No, Boss Shiji, you can do whatever you want, I don't mind at all, as long as you can accept it." "What's the meaning?" Shiji was stunned for a moment and asked a little strangely. Neiman quickly said at this time, "Put it down quickly, Admiral, this thunder fruit was dug out from the smelly ditch in the garbage mountain. I don't know if it was soaked in those smelly water. How long has it been there? Don't you think it smells bad? Are you still playing with it in your hand?" After Shiji heard Neiman's words, his expression changed, his face turned dark, and he quickly threw the thunder fruit on the tray. Then he felt that his hands stunk. Shiji couldn't help cursing. "Why didn't you tell me earlier? Admiral, you took it before we even opened our mouths," Neiman said somewhat helplessly. Shiji came in a hurry and left in a hurry. He seemed to have lost interest in the top-notch ability of the thunder fruit in an instant. He turned around and left. There was no doubt that he went to wash his hands. Orgrim looked at Shiki's slightly embarrassed back and couldn't help laughing. Shiji was so angry that he turned around and glared at him before leaving. "Gee ha 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 ha," Orgrim laughed loudly, and then said, "Would any of you be interested in becoming a user with the thunder fruit ability? The strongest natural type? Invincible ability? Alas, if I hadn't eaten the impact fruit, I would have said nothing." He just drank it all in one bite. Beckman also laughed after hearing Orgrim's shameless words, and said very evilly, "Yes, it's a pity, I also ate the poisonous fruit. If I had known earlier, I would have waited. Damn it, I really want to swallow this thunder fruit in one gulp." Neiman was also stunned for a moment, then smiled in the same evil way, shook her head and said, "I'm envious too, but it's a pity that I am a muscle fruit user. Alas, I can't eat it." While everyone was talking, they looked at the little Lolita Sphinx. The Sphinx was stunned for a moment, then asked, "What are you doing? Do you want to see what I do?" Sphinx, didn't you say before that you wanted to find a powerful devil fruit ability? To make up for some of my shortcomings in physical fitness, Orgrim said with an evil smile. Beckman also reached out and rubbed the Sphinx's head, and said, "Thunderfruit, it transforms into thunder and lightning. This physical quality is the elemental transformation of the natural system, extremely fast speed, huge strike range, combined with your explosive firepower. I can't even imagine how powerful it will be. Why are you hesitating? Just eat it in one bite." To be honest, while searching for the thunderfruit, Sphinx did think about whether she should beg Orgrim to give it to her to eat after finding the thunderfruit. After all, becoming a user with the power of the thunderfruit definitely has a bright future. Sphinx has always wanted to find a powerful devil fruit, and the thunderfruit is definitely the best choice. But she also knows that the thunderfruit is very precious, so go and find it yourself, I begged Orgrim, but I didn't know if he would agree. What price would I have to pay? Wash myself clean, pack myself up, and send him to Orgrim's room? Regarding his appearance, Svenkes is still very confident, but what's wrong with her figure, washboard? In the past few days, Sphinx had been thinking a lot, but in the end she did not mention it to Orgrim, mainly because she was not sure whether she would find the thunderfruit. If he couldn't find it, wouldn't he have bowed to Orgrim in vain? Therefore, she planned to wait until she actually found the thunderfruit before picking it up. But now, the thunderfruit has been found, but the original thoughts of the Sphinx have also disappeared. Eat shit, if you really eat the stuff in the stinking ditch, let alone whether it will have deteriorated or lost its effectiveness because it has been soaked in the stinking ditch for so many years. But he will definitely become the laughing stock of Orgrim and others in the future, and he will be pulled out to whip corpses from time to time. And how could I, such a cute little Lolita, eat such a thing? The thunderfruit is not the only powerful devil fruit, so don't rush now and look for it later. Don't eat it, definitely don't eat it. Impossible. I don't want to eat this smelly stuff, the Sphinx shook her head crazily. Those two ponytails were swinging back and forth behind her, looking extremely cute. Gee ha 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 ha, take one bite and you will become the strongest, Orgrim said to the Sphinx very seductively. The Sphinx glared at Orgrim fiercely and cursed, "You guys are so bad. Got it? I'll shoot you in the head." Everyone laughed after listening to Sphinx's words. For a moment, no one was willing to eat the most powerful devil fruit, the thunder fruit, which was placed on the sea and should be fought over by countless people. This is really a strange phenomenon. Just keep it for now and see if there is anyone who has been taken advantage of later, Beckman joked with a smile. Orgrim turned his head and glanced at Enelu. Sure enough, this kid also looked disgusted. Orgrim couldn't help but smile. He had changed Enel's fate, otherwise God knows under what circumstances he would have eaten this stinking thunderfruit. How on earth did he find this thing from the smelly ditch in the garbage mountain? I'll keep this thing for now. If I find a suitable candidate later, I'll trick him into eating it. Orgrim nodded, then looked at Enelu and said, "By the way, if you work hard, boy, if you perform well in the future, I will reward you with the strongest devil fruit." Enel's face turned pale, and the corner of his mouth was a little bitter, but he did not dare to disobey Orgrim, so he nodded awkwardly without saying anything more. "Don't look like you are dying. When you go to the sea, you will know how vast this world is. By then, you will also understand that only strength is everything. Maybe you will cry and shout, 'I want to eat the thunder fruit.'" Orgrim reached out and patted Enelu's head. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 166. After finding the thunderfruit, Shiji didn't bother the unlucky Baika people anymore. However, he was too lazy to clean up the mess. After 2 days of rectification and everyone taking a rest, Shiji's flagship left Baika very quickly and headed towards Angel Island. The unlucky people of Baikakong Island finally sent away Shiji, the plague god. They finally got rid of their slave status and regained their freedom. But looking at the completely destroyed town and the cliffs surrounding the island, they felt like crying. In this sea, the strong do whatever they want. And the weak are so miserable. The thunder fruit also fully proves what is meant by the common man is not guilty of carrying a jade. Although finding the so-called strongest thunder fruit should have been a great joy, Shiji has been in a bad mood these past few days. He had to wash his hands at every turn, and his hands were almost bald. Orgrim was sitting in the main hall of Shikina, watching with some amusement as Shiki would pick up his hand and smell it from time to time, and then look disgusted. This main hall has also been repaired during the time I stayed in Baika. Orgrim didn't dare to play with the shells on the empty island, lest he cause any more trouble. Otherwise, with Shiji's current mood, he might really be able to hunt him to the ends of the earth. Stop smelling it. It doesn't smell bad. You just scratched it twice. How many days has it been? The skin on my hands has been washed to pieces by you. Orgrim looked at Shiji's disgusted look and couldn't help but speak. Shiji turned his head and glanced at Orgrim, and couldn't help cursing, "You bastard are looking for some thunder fruit, otherwise I will suffer this. Can you blame me? I didn't know that thing would be soaking in a smelly ditch," Orgrim complained helplessly. "Go back and ask Indigo to research a great soap for me," Shiki muttered. Orgrim didn't know it at this time, but just because of the thunder fruit, Shiji's mysophobia was aroused. From then on, Shiji had to wash his hands 17 or 8 times a day, and take a shower before going to bed, otherwise he would feel uncomfortable all over. "That thunder fruit, what are you going to do?" Shiji waved his hand, sat on the throne, looked at Orgrim and asked. Orgrim smiled and said, "I originally wanted to fool the Sphinx to see if she would eat it." Well, he was rejected without hesitation. There are no suitable candidates now, so let's keep it. Let's see if there is someone who likes him in the future. Let him eat and cultivate him. Sphinx. Shiji smiled when he heard this, shook his head and said, "As for the origin of the thunder fruit, I suggest you not to mention it again, otherwise if others find out, no one will be willing to eat it." Orgrim nodded with a smile, but thought in his heart, "If no one really eats it in the future, I will find a way to get this thunder fruit into my sledgehammer, and use Thor's hammer. Meow hammer or something. Of course, this is just the worst plan." Orgrim has been thinking about getting something fancy for the hammer recently. After all, this can be regarded as enhancing his combat effectiveness from the side. But for the thunder fruit, use on the doom hammer, it is too luxurious, and he does not have this technology for the time being. After all, as long as he finds a passable guy to eat the thunder fruit, he will have a general level combat power in the future, top-notch master. And put it on the hammer, how much can it be enhanced? Orgrim didn't know, but he didn't want to gamble. After Shiji chatted with Orgrim for a while, he asked a little strangely, "What are you looking at?" At this time, Orgrim held a stack of drawings in his hand and was flipping through them. After hearing Shiji's inquiry, Orgrim smiled and said, "Are you interested in Baika's black technology?" As he said that, Orgrim walked to Shiji, and then stopped. I was polite and sat down on Shiji's throne. It was so big that it could fit 3 people, so don't be so stingy. Shiki seemed to be used to Orgrim's shameless behavior and didn't bother to talk to him at all. He reached out and took the drawings from Orgrim's hand. He only glanced at them twice and lost interest. "What do I think this is, an airship?" Not interested in Shiji waved his hand and said. Orgrim was not surprised. After all, Shiji is a user with the Piao Piao fruit ability. Not to mention flying ships, even flying islands, he has more than 10 or 20 in his hands. Therefore, this green cos black technology is meaningless in Shiji's opinion. However, Orgrim is very interested. Shiji's young men dug up the ground 3 feet deep and washed it. They found valuable. All the things were sent to Shiji's ship, such as all kinds of weird Sky Island shells. And this blueprint. This blueprint was dug out from the ruins of the city hall that Shiji killed. Above it is a ship, the design drawing of the airship. The name of the ship is Ark Proverb. According to this design, this ship has the ability to fly. The main technology lies in the specialty of Sky Island, Fang Fang shell. This Sky Island shell, recently in a few years, it has begun to go extinct and is rarely found. However, it is very powerful, able to absorb air by itself and continuously emit strong airflow. Judging from the design drawing, only 30 jets are needed with a shell. You can lift a giant ship no less than a warship into the air. Coupled with the rest of the design and so on, after some modifications, you can create an airship. But what is slightly embarrassing is that the moving speed of this kind of ship is relatively slow, and it is not as fast as Shiji's ability is the same. Once he encounters any storm, it will be very dangerous. But no matter what, this is a very high-end technology. Orgrim thought that if Shiji didn't care, he could use it himself. His deep-sea overlord Black Narwhal can currently travel on the sea and can also dive into the deep sea. But it can't fly. If such a device is installed, it will really be considered a complete sea, land, and air. All kinds of performance can be greatly improved. If you are not interested, I will take this drawing. Orgrim smiled and said. How? Do you look down on my ability? Shiji raised his eyebrows and asked with some dissatisfaction. Gee, ha 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 ha, that's not true. This is a good technology. I plan to use it on my ship. If I go out alone in the future, I can fly without you. Orgrim laughed. It's up to you. Shiji waved his hands without interest and said. After a pause, Shiji seemed to feel a little unbalanced in his heart, and then muttered, You bastard, you tricked me into coming to Sky Island, and now you have found the thunder fruit, and you still got it. What kind of blueprint did I get? If I can't find any golden land when I go to Angel Island, wouldn't my trip be in vain? I want you to look good then. Ha 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 ha, don't worry, I know it well, Orgrim said casually. If the thunder fruit is an uncertain factor, and the design of the Ark's proverbs is an unexpected surprise, then Orgrim can be said to have great confidence in the land of gold. No one knows the land of gold better than me. Orgrim patted his chest confidently and said. Then he was too lazy to pay attention to Shiji and continued to look at the drawing. He also felt a little regretful that he did not bring Vincent this time, otherwise he would be able to confirm it. Now let's see if this technology is real or not. And how feasible it is. But Orgrim is quite confident in this thing, because if nothing else happens, this thing will probably fall into Ani's hands in the future. He went to enslave Angel Island and successfully built this thing. Then he used this thing to carry him to the moon and search for the infinite land. There's no reason why Enlil can do it, but why can't Orgrim do it? The geographical coordinates of Angel Island, if viewed from a nautical chart, are over Gaia Island. This means that Orgrim and his party are going from the New World to the middle of the first half of the Grand Line. Baika is within the New World, so there's not much to say. It will also take a certain amount of time to get to Angel Island. Shiji estimates that it will take about a week. This is because Shiji's ship is flying in the air at an extremely fast speed. If he can walk on the sea, he may not be able to do it within a few months. However, neither Orgrim nor Shiji could have imagined at this time that the Roger pirates were also preparing to take off. On Gaia Island, the Oro Jackson has been equipped with a pair of huge wings. Is sailing on the sea. At this time, the sea gradually became turbulent, and soon a huge whirlpool began to take shape. Then, several unlucky sea beasts were sucked into the whirlpool and struggled to get out, but to no avail. Roger and others were quickly sucked into the whirlpool. At this moment, they felt a little uneasy in their hearts. This soaring ocean current, it's really coming. Riley smacked his lips with some emotion. Captain Roger, please, let's find a safer way. Bucky grabbed the mast and cried bitterly. He swore that he didn't want to go to the empty island at all. Couldn't he have a happy adventure on the sea? Ah ha 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 ha, Bucky, get ready, we are going to heaven, Roger laughed and said. The moment his words fell, the whirlpool on the sea suddenly sank, and then a powerful impact burst out from under the sea. Then Gaia Island's annual grand scene, the soaring current broke out. The Oro Jackson was directly swept up by the soaring current and flew into the sky, and soon disappeared from the sight of everyone on Gaia Island. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 167. Just when Shiji and Roger were both in heaven. The world on the sea is also constantly moving, and it has not calmed down just because people like them are away. It is now the middle of the year 1498 in the Haiwan calendar, and the World Conference has been held as scheduled. Speaking of which, the World Conference is held every 4 years, with 50 participating countries participating each time. But in fact, occasionally, impromptu World Conferences occur. Then, the time of the World Conference will be adjusted, and the 4-year interval of the World Conference will be recalculated from the year it was held. However, this kind of situation is very rare, and it will not happen once in tens or even hundreds of years. Holy Land Marijoa, Garp just got off his dog-headed warship. Recently, the Navy generals have been escorting royal families from various countries to participate in the World Conference. In previous years, Garp would also participate in these tasks. But this time, he didn't. He had just returned from the capital of Seven Waters, and the senior generals of the Navy were going to launch the proposal for the King Shishibukai plan in Marijoya. As a naval hero, he naturally has to be there. Damn Sengoku, what information did you give me? Are you saying that the Roger pirates will appear in the capital of Seven Waters? I've been waiting in the capital of Seven Waters for a whole month, but I haven't seen a single hair of the Roger pirates. Garp cursed and walked on the road, looking very unhappy. He was followed by Jun and Kyuzan. Kyuzan had an eye mask hanging on his head, looking like he had just woken up. We went to the Seven Waters capital with Garp before, but nothing happened. It was like a vacation for more than a month, and I felt very happy. Jun happened to meet them at the port of Marijo, so they came together. Gone. Lieutenant General Garp, any news about Durag lately? That guy hasn't contacted you, Jun asked with some curiosity. Ever since the implementation of the King's Shishibukai plan, Jun has been feeling uncomfortable. She wanted to find someone to talk to, but there was no suitable person. For some reason, she remembered the conversation in Dalag's office. Or maybe that Dalag guy, have you foreseen this? Is that why he left? After listening to Jun's words, Garp waved his hands and said, "Don't mention that bastard to me, he made me so angry." What's wrong? Jun asked curiously. After hearing this, Kyuzan couldn't help laughing and said, "Ah, I know this." Garp glared at Kyuzan and snorted in dissatisfaction, but did not stop Kyuzan from speaking. Kyuzan then smiled, raised his brows, and said, "Perhaps you don't know, not long ago, Durag contacted Mr. Garp." "Oh? Is he planning to return to the Navy?" Jun asked curiously. "Of course not. If that guy was so easy to turn around, he wouldn't leave the Navy." Kyuzan waved his hand and said. "What's going on?" Jun asked with some confusion. Kyuzan smiled and said mysteriously, "I'll probably beat you to death, and you won't be able to guess it." "What's going on? Stop being so mysterious, okay? Say it." As soon as Jun's bad temper came up, he couldn't help but touch the jinpura hanging on his waist. Kyuzan didn't dare to provoke Jun, the bad-tempered goddess of the Navy, anymore. He grinned and said, "At that time, everyone was shocked. That guy Durag was leaving the Navy, went to the East China Sea, and then, he found a woman in the East China Sea and got married. Ha 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 ha, you can't think of it, right? Jun was shocked when he heard this, and then he also laughed. Ha 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 ha, that dull, ignorant guy can also find a woman he likes? It's so weird, isn't it? Jun laughed. She had a very good relationship with Durag, but there had never been any love between men and women. But before, Jun really wanted to introduce someone to Durag. Many of the little sisters have a secret crush on Durag, the son of a naval hero and a promising leader of the new generation of the Navy. But every time, Durag is very ignorant and engages in such dirty things. Jun is too angry to be too lazy. Never mind his nonsense. Now that he suddenly heard that this guy Durag found a girl in Donghai and got married, Jun was of course very surprised. But this guy is really married, so he doesn't invite us? After all, we have been teammates in the Navy together for so many years, Jun said with some dissatisfaction. At this point, Jun seemed to understand why Garp was so angry. He didn't tell anyone, and it was even a month or two before he remembered to use the phone bug to notify Mr. Garp. Kuzin smiled and said. No wonder Lieutenant General Garp was so angry. Jun said a little funny. Garp's face darkened and he cursed. I don't agree with this marriage. I have never seen what kind of woman she is. Can Garp not be angry at this time? He was already very irritated because he had not blocked the Roger pirates in the capital of Seven Waters. But Drago called Bugs and told him that he had been married for 2 months. I forgot to inform him, let me tell him now. Garp was confused at the time. You bastard, you left the Navy without saying hello. I can't bear it, now you are married, and you haven't given me this old father. Say something? But Durag had no intention of meeting Garp, nor did he tell Garp where he was living in seclusion. He just told Garp not to look for him. Maybe in the future, when there is a suitable time, the two of them could meet again. Let's meet. These words almost made Garp vomit blood. Huh, don't let me find that bastard, or I'll slap him in the face with the sole of my shoe, Garp muttered. Ha 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 ha, then he might not show up again, Jun laughed and said. To be honest, Mr. Garp, even if you disagree with Durag's marriage, it is completely useless. You know his character. Kuzin joked with a smile. Snort, Garp snorted coldly and walked to Maragio's bubble elevator with dissatisfaction. Jun and Kuzin both followed in, and then Jun said, I'm really curious, what kind of woman can be did that guy Durag surrender? Well, who knows? Kuzin also murmured with some emotion. Soon, he smiled again and said, she should be the kind of gentle, virtuous, and charming woman, right? At least it's much better than you, a guy who is always ready to stab people with a knife. Hey, Kuzin, do you want to fight? I also look stunning, okay? Jun glared at Kuzin fiercely and asked. Yes, yes, but this is the only advantage you have in your body. Kuzin curled his lips and complained unceremoniously. You bastard, Jun was so angry that he drew his sword and killed Kuzin. Garp laughed and said, okay, okay, you two, stop making trouble. This is Marijoa. If anything happens, those bastards from CP-0 are going to cause trouble for me. If we say that the Navy headquarters is the most violent institution and military department that the world government relies on. The CP agency is the intelligence agency and secret service department that the world government relies on most. They are the eyes of the world government, responsible for helping the world government keep an eye on everything in the world, including the Navy. By the way, he will also help the world government handle some shady and dirty work. For 800 years, the relationship between the CP agency and the Navy headquarters has always been stiff. There is no way, the Navy doesn't want to have a young man spying on them all day long, reporting to the world government every day, and annoying them. The two institutions also handle many issues differently. The Navy is somewhat biased towards justice. The CP organization is even darker. As long as the correct result can be achieved, the process is meaningless. And the senior officials of the world government also know that they cannot let either side of the two families dominate the other side. To achieve a balance, you can control them more deeply. Therefore, they not only fail to mediate the conflicts between the Navy headquarters and the CP agencies, but sometimes even deliberately provoke them. This is normal. After all, if the CP agency and the Navy headquarters fall in love with each other, the first one to panic will definitely be the world government. The strongest intelligence agency and the strongest military agency combined into one are simply monsters. What if they have any bad intentions? That was a disaster. Therefore, the world government sometimes deliberately intensifies the conflicts between the two parties, and then suppresses and appeases one party after it becomes stronger than the other. This method is very sneaky. From an institutional perspective, the CP agency is actually lower than the Navy headquarters. In most cases, the Navy headquarters suppresses the CP agency, and even Navy generals can directly mobilize people from the CP agency. But the top level of the CP organization, that is, CP-0, this is a very special organization. It is precisely because of their presence that the CP organization has been able to fight with the Navy for so many years. Because CP-0 directly serves the Celestial Dragon class, their backers are very strong, and the Navy headquarters really can't afford to offend them. Holy Land Marijoa is one of the headquarters of the CP organization, and people from CP-0 are active here. Therefore, Garp doesn't want to cause any trouble here. It will end badly when the time comes. Humph, if you really talk about it, those guys are the real lackeys, out and out, without any bottom line. When Jun heard the name CP-0, he said with disgust. Dark Justice, Kuzan also mocked with some disdain. Although the CP agency also insists on justice, the bosses of the Navy headquarters have never recognized their theory of dark justice. In private, they often call them running dogs. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 168. Pongal Castle, where the World Congress was held. Some senior generals of the Navy are also stationed here at this time. As soon as Garp saw Sengoku, he cursed angrily. Sengoku, what kind of information did you bastard give me? Where's Roger? Sengoku felt a little embarrassed after hearing this. At that time, he indeed deduced that the Roger pirates would go to the capital of Seven Waters to search for ancient weapons. This matter was too important, so he sent Garp over immediately. He even gathered some remaining strength, just waiting for the Roger pirates to show up and kill them. As a result, the Roger pirates did not appear in the Seven Waters capital at all. This made the Sengoku general, who claimed to be a wisdom general, very embarrassed, and he was also cursing the Roger pirates in his heart. Where have you bastards gone? Ahem, things have changed, the Warring States general said with some embarrassment. Garp also knew that this kind of thing was normal. He just complained about Sengoku casually and said nothing more. He sat down on the sofa, took out a pack of senbei from his arms, and ate it very naturally. While eating, he asked the Warring States general, how is it? What do the people above think of our King's Shichibukai plan? The world government issued a draft of the King's Shichibukai plan and requested the Navy headquarters to base it on actual conditions. Situation, complete. The Warring States period and the others had also worked hard on their son a while ago, but they did not send it to him immediately. Just delay it for as long as you can. The Navy is good at this. It was not until the convening of this World Conference that Sengoku came to Marijoy with the complete plan of the Shichibukai and handed it over after being urged several times by the top leaders of the world government. Listening to Garp's inquiry, Warring States nodded and said it has been approved. After all, we have not included any unreasonable factors in this plan. This is indeed the case. Although the Navy has thought of many ways to prepare for the 7 Wuhai plans to hold back, play dirty tricks and so on. However, they completed the filling of this plan very responsibly, just because they were afraid that the world government would become suspicious. The world government is also mentally prepared for the Navy to come up with a messy plan. After some review, I found that the Navy did a very good job. It could even be said to be perfect. Although they felt strange in their hearts, they couldn't find anything wrong. Just pretend that this year's military expenditure has not been paid yet, so the Navy people don't dare to make any trouble here. After a few big guys chatted for a while, the Warring States General looked mysterious and said softly, "I heard some news here." "What news?" General Zifa asked curiously. Garp also stopped eating senbei and looked at Sengoku with great interest. After seeing that everyone's eyes were attracted to him, General Sengoku pretended to eat senbei. He happily took a sip of the tea on the table, looking like he was trying to show off. At this moment, Senior Staff Officer Ahe coughed his throat unhappily. After hearing this voice, the Warring States General did not dare to pretend anymore. Everyone laughed. Garp, Zifa, Sengoku, and Ahe were born at the same time, and they all joined the Navy at the same stage. However, compared with Garp, Sengoku, and Ahe, Zifa's promotion route was a bit more tortuous. Before he was promoted to Lieutenant General, he had no contact with them. The other 3 were promoted from the ranks together. Now, a general, a naval hero, and a naval chief staff officer it is said that they are all in high positions and hold great power. Not to mention Garp. He was a bit dissolute when he was young. He found a girl outside the Navy to marry. Later, he got the boy to rag, but his wife he also passed away many years ago due to poor health. There has always been some unclear relationship between the Warring States period and General Ahe. But I don't know if it's because they both have decided to dedicate their lives to justice, or because the two people are quite awkward when it comes to relationships. Anyway, they are already middle-aged, and the affairs between the two of them have not been clarified. Over time, it has become an undisclosed secret among the top brass of the Navy. Warring States period. The general put down the teacup in his hand, and then whispered, "I heard from Wulaoxing that it seems that in 2 years, Brother Cyborg may want to mention it." "Mention it? How to mention it? Is there still room for Admiral?" Garp said with some surprise. But as he spoke, his expression changed slightly. "Yes, in the Navy's system, the Navy Marshal is the top position, but in the world government's system, the military's the pinnacle is not a Marshal of the Navy. It is the Commander-in-Chief of the entire Army. The person with the highest military power under the world government can even be qualified to appoint and remove senior generals of the Navy. Even CP-0 can do this without conflicting with the orders of the Celestial Dragons. We must also obey the orders of the Commander-in-Chief of the Army. Under the world government, there are more than 170 participating countries, and the armies of each joining country are legally under the command of the Commander-in-Chief of the Army. Even Alaba, the same is true for Stan's million-strong army. Of course, the world government and the Commander-in-Chief of the Army rarely use this kind of power to mobilize the world. Occasionally, they will mobilize a little when recruiting troops. After all, the joining countries also, if the world government insists on taking action against other countries' armies, it will not be fun if it causes a mutiny. But in any case, even if these powers are excluded, the Commander-in-Chief of the entire Army is still very powerful, at least for this is true for the Navy. The current Commander-in-Chief of the Army came from the CP organization. Therefore, in recent years, the CP organization has taken advantage of various struggles with the Navy. And the top leaders of the world government, such as Wulaoxing and so on, he believed that one family could not be the only one, so he decided that the next Commander-in-Chief of the entire Army should be selected from the Navy. And among the Navy, the only person with this qualification is undoubtedly Cyborg Sara, the Navy General. Commander-in-Chief of the entire Army, Jun also shouted softly. If Brother Cyborg can become the commander-in-chief of the entire army, it will be a great thing for our navy. Those bastards from CP will be dealt with properly then. General Zifa said in a deep voice. Warring States period, is there any specific news? Senior Staff Officer Ahe asked with a raised eyebrow. Warring States nodded, shook his head, and said, the more specific news is that this is just an intention. I guess it will depend on the performance of our navy. This is true, if they don't make some great achievements, even if the guys above want to promote Brother Cyborg to be the commander-in-chief, it will be unreasonable. Garp nodded and said. Speaking of which, their navy has also been on a downhill path in recent years, not in terms of strength. It's in terms of performance. After all, they have ruined the New World. Now the world government has lost control of the New World, which is very embarrassing. In theory, the King's Shichibukai plan is a plan to make up for this control. If the Navy plays tricks on the New World, the world government will not engage in such a plan planned. In any case, as long as it has this meaning, it means that as long as we make achievements, at least no one will hinder our Navy in this matter. Garp smacked his lips and said. Yes, let's make some achievements first. General Zifa also nodded and said. In fact, after Roger surrendered, the world government publicized that the Pirate King was captured by the Navy. Originally, according to the script, it was prepared to push the Navy Marshal Cyborg to the head of the army. He took the position of handsome man. The result was good. During the execution, the Navy caused some accidents, which made Roger, a tattletale, say a few more words. He just ruined a golden start, and the era of great pirates began. One time, the times have changed, and the top priority of the world government is to stop this rampant pirate era, and it is inconvenient to mobilize and arrange the navy. Cyborg, the naval marshal, is needed to stabilize the situation. Therefore, Cyborg's promotion path is here. Interrupted once. Later, when Cyborg was promoted to commander-in-chief of the army, it was thanks to Fisher Tiger, a fishman who was so good at it. Fisher Tiger, burning Holy Land Mary Joasia, and organized a slave liberation movement. He caused harm to Marijoa, and then ran to the sea to form the Sun Pirates. The day he existed was a day of shame for the world government. Commander Cyborg finally led the navy and killed this guy. Not only was the face of the world government picked up, the Tianlong people were also very happy, so at this time, he truly took the position of commander-in-chief of the entire army. Warring States period. The general was also promoted to the rank of Marshal of the Navy, and the three natural generals headed by Sakaski began to be established at that time. When Cyborg became the commander-in-chief of the army, the Navy also quickly became stronger. In the next 10 years or so, the strength continued to rise. During the Battle of the Top, the Whitebeard pirates were directly wiped out. Even later, after the Warring States Marshal resigned and Sakaski came to power, with this powerful the Navy immediately started its counterattack on the New World after more than 20 years, and banned the disgusting Shichibukai plan in one fell swoop. As you can imagine, Sengoku became the Marshal of the Navy, and Cyborg became the commander of the entire army. The commander-in-chief, on a macro level, has brought great changes to the Navy. Sakaski has caught up with the good times. Of course, from the perspective of the New World at that time, he can also be regarded as catching up with the worst era. Whether the final result is good or bad depends on Sakaski's skill and ability. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 169. The World Conference was held as scheduled, and the Navy also participated. The King's Shichibukai plan was also proposed. Although there were many disputes, in the end, with the strong support of the world government, This plan was still given the highest legal recognition by the World Conference and became a reasonable and legal proposal. At the same time, on the White Sea at an altitude of 10,000 meters, the Roger pirates also found a legendary land of gold. Sandala, the land of gold, is a city built entirely of gold. The value of the city is not only gold, but also the hundreds of years of historical precipitation. It can be said that everything here has the value of an antique. If we slowly develop their value, they will be much more valuable than treating them directly as gold. But at this time, the city was already covered by vines, dust, and mud. Although you can still see its former glory from this, now it does look dilapidated. Roger reached out and plucked away the scabs formed by hundreds of years of dust and soil from a piece of wall. Then, the dazzling gold was revealed under the scab. Roger was a little surprised, and then he reached out and swiped at the wall. Wherever he passed, dust flew up, and under the dust, there was crazy gold. Originally, in Roger's fantasy, although the land of gold was very likely to exist, it was probably exaggerated. An entire city built entirely of gold? Isn't this a disease? How can it be? I guess at best, there are a lot of gold treasures buried here, right? But now, Roger believes it. He can't help but not believe it. The facts are in front of him. Okay. This place looks like the ruins of a house. Just rub it on the gray wall and wipe off the dust and scabs. What is revealed is 10% gold. Land of gold, Sandora, Roger murmured with emotion, and then said helplessly, Rolando has been misunderstood by the world for more than 400 years, and has been regarded as a big liar by the world for more than 400 years, what kind of mood did he have when his head was chopped off? Thinking of this, Roger felt a little uncomfortable and sad. The great liar Wenbrand Rolando, he is a great adventurer and one of the pioneers of this world. Roger recognized Rolando in his heart, and then said, if we really find Ralph Drew, then I will be there, leave the answer, and tell the world that Wenbrand Rolando is a hero, the king of Gold Township Sandora is real. However, Roger's feelings as a slightly artistic young man have not dissipated yet. He was immediately interrupted. Bucky and Shanks, two cheaters, had climbed onto the head of a huge statue. Then they were shouting excitedly, and then accidentally, they lost the 400 years of history. The head of the already fragile statue was broken due to the blowing and rain. Then the two men fell off the statue together. But they were very sturdy. Bucky got up from the ground in one breath, hugged the golden statue head, and shouted, Shanks, I found this, it is my treasure. Bucky, didn't the two of us do this together? Shanks said with some annoyance. Just when these two funny guys were arguing, Rayleigh went up and slapped each of them on the back of the head. You two idiots, show me some respect for history, Lila educated them first. Then he turned around and said, I will confiscate this golden head first. Hey, Vice Captain. There is gold everywhere here, do you insist on grabbing it from us? Bucky said helplessly. The others also laughed. Kojiki Odin was also shocked at this time. Such a big city is full of gold. How much does it cost? Roger laughed and said, okay, we discovered this place first. When we leave, pack as much gold as possible. Now, let's look for our main target. Yes, since the Golden Land really exists, it proves that the Sandians must also exist, and the historical text guarded by those fighting nations that galloped on the sea hundreds of years ago must also exist. Quickly find the historical text, Rayleigh said quickly. Sandora, the land of gold, is very big, but the Roger pirates were not slow in searching. After all, no one came to disturb them here. Soon, in a huge golden bell next, Roger and others found a piece of historical text. At this time, their expressions were a little complicated. They were excited and a little disappointed. After all, the Roger pirates came here to find the historical text of the road sign. and the historical text of the road sign was the largest. The characteristic is that it is red. The one in front of me is obviously not just an ordinary historical text, and there will be no news about Rafdru on it. It seems we are going in the wrong direction. Jabba shook his head with regret and said. The last road sign historical text, where exactly? Roger also shook his head helplessly. But soon, he smiled optimistically and said, but it's nothing. We have found a piece of historical text and the land of gold. What if in the future? If we have more time, maybe we can find the Sea of Gemstones and the capital of emeralds, ha 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 ha. The land of gold, the Sea of Gems, and the capital of emeralds. They are the three most widely spread treasures on the sea. However, no one has found these treasures for hundreds of years. Many people on the sea regard these three treasures as I listen to the stories and legends. But now, Roger and the others have found the land of gold. Although it cannot prove anything, it is indeed news that increases confidence. The land of gold is there, and the Sea of Gemstones and the Emerald City may not be fictitious. You are right, we are not here in vain. Let's first take a look at what is written in the historical text, Jabba said with a smile. Rayleigh reached out and wiped away the dust on the historical text, revealing the ancient text that most people could not read. At this moment, Roger seemed to hear something. That was a story from 800 years ago. Kojaki Odin also read the words softly. Under the deep sea, the promise once made, Kojaki Odin read softly. Everyone was quickly immersed in this story from 800 years ago. After a long time, Roger opened his eyes after listening to this history, and Kojaki Odin also finished telling the story. Layli and others all looked very shocked. This piece of historical text that looks so inconspicuous that if you don't even pay attention, it will be regarded as the base of the golden clock, actually records such shocking news. The secret of Poseidon? In fact, many big names in the sea know some information about ancient weapons. For example, Pluto is a super battleship that can destroy an island with one shot. Poseidon, the king of the sea, has the ability to control the Sea King class and can cause riots in the world. But no one knows the specific status of these things. Before that, Roger also knew that Poseidon, the king of the sea, could control Neptune's species. But he didn't know where Neptune was or what he looked like. But now, he knows that it turns out that the legendary Poseidon, the ancient weapon, is the power of blood. The Neptune royal family spread on Fishman Island. Every few generations, the mermaid princess will awaken the power of the Neptune and be able to communicate with the Neptune species, becoming the king of the Neptune species and the king of the four seas. What the hell, this little Fishman Island is so blatantly cheating. They are so awesome, why don't they rule the world? In fact, this problem has also troubled Orgrim for a long time. Logically speaking, the mermaids have 10 times the strength of humans, and the mermaids are the fastest swimming race in the ocean. They can also breathe freely in the sea water. There are many monsters in the deep sea that can be driven by them. This kind of fighting power and this kind of quality. In this world made up of the sea, it is simply a race of destiny, okay. But what has become of such an awesome force now? Nestled under 10,000 meters of the sea, I don't even have the right to breathe on the surface of the sea. Every time I sneak up there, I am afraid of being discovered by humans and taken as a slave. What the hell is this? Are your ancient weapons just decorations? Is your fierce fighting power a joke? Even if you can't go to a mainstream island, then it's easy to follow Amazon Lily and develop in a windless zone, right? In the past few hundred years, has there never been a king of Fishman Island with ambitious plans? As for the mermaid princess, there is no princess in the Neptune royal family now, only 2 princes, that is to say, Riley's thinking was very sharp and he grasped the key points. In other words, this generation of Poseidon, the king of the sea, is still sleeping, Roger murmured softly. After thinking about this important factor, Roger frowned slightly, and he seemed to have a bad premonition. He wants to find Rafdru and bring some different changes to the world. But looking at it now, he seems to be, wrong time? Came a little early? At least on the level of Poseidon, he was early. Narabdru, what's going on? Roger was a little scared, but soon his eyes became firm. Even if the time is not right, I must find the secrets and truth of this world. Only in this way can we leave this world without regrets, isn't it? Odin, Roger shouted softly. What's up, Kojiki? Odin looked at Roger and asked. Please help me leave a sentence on it, Roger grinned and said with a smile. What to leave behind? Odin also smiled and asked. Just stay, Roger chuckled lightly as he spoke, and continued. I came here to guide this text to its final destination, Gordy Roger. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 170. After listening to Roger's words, Kojiki Odin smiled, and then said, leave it to me. Even though I am a pirate now, my Kojiki family has been an excellent stonemason for generations. After falling, Kojiki Odin took out a set of tools from his arms. Then the carving started on the historical text. According to rumors, the historical text that cannot be destroyed by any force was actually destroyed by the set of tools. Soon, Kojiki Odin carved Roger's words on it. Knock off, Kojiki Odin said with a smile. Roger also had a smile on his lips, and then he said, okay, we also know the things in the historical text, and the Golden Land is also here. Come down, take a rest, grab some gold and let's leave. Captain Roger, why don't you let me stay here and sort out all the treasures, and you go down and bring up a big boat, and we can put more gold in it, Bucky suddenly said. Ha 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 ha, Bucky, I'm afraid we won't be able to hurry back. Are you sure you want to stay here? How will you go down alone then? Rayleigh laughed and said. Bucky was also stunned for a moment, and then he looked very reluctant and said, now that I leave, will I never come back? What are you thinking about, Bucky? You can come here by yourself in the future, you already know the location here anyway, Shanks said with a smile. Bucky was stunned for a moment, and then became even more reluctant, because he knew that with his ability, even if he knew that Sandora, the land of gold, was here, he would not dare to take the risk. I've landed on Sky Island once. Just when everyone was talking about this, Roger's expression suddenly changed. The same happened to the three masters, Rayleigh, Jabba, and Odin. Bucky hadn't reacted yet. A slash had already escaped, flew out directly from his body, and cut him into two pieces. Just before the remaining power of the slash was gone, the famous sword Yama in Odin's hand was unsheathed, very accurately. He blocked the slashing attack and couldn't help but take 2 steps back. This is, Roger turned his head and looked in the direction where the slash was coming, and then his expression became very surprised. Gee ha 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 ha, Roger, Shiji shouted excitedly as he flew in the air. He never expected that he would really find Sandora, the land of gold, under the leadership of Orgrim. This is a whole city's gold. What surprised him even more was that he actually found the bastard Roger here. There was no storm now. But the excited Shiji seemed to have forgotten one thing. He didn't bring any big fleet, either. The powerful independent captains are no longer here at this time. Shiki, Roger's expression sank, and he looked at Shikitheo very unhappy. Unexpectedly, you also found Sandora, the land of gold? What a fate, Roger, Shiki laughed and spoke. Then, he seemed to have discovered the historical text inscribed in ancient characters, and then his expression changed. Historical text? What news did you get from it? Ancient weapons. Roger grinned and said, what? Ancient weapons. They just record some history from 800 years ago. If you want to find ancient weapons, you are still 10,000 years early. Huh, when you were in Adwal, you once said that you knew the secrets of some ancient weapons, right? Now it seems that you have also mastered the method of interpreting ancient texts, Roger. I ask you again, do you want to be my right-hand man and share the world with me? Shiji raised his chin and said very unruly. Didn't I already tell you the answer? Shiki, Roger grinned and said with a smile. It seems you still haven't changed your mind, Shiki said softly. Then he narrowed his eyes, and the next second, several golden chains suddenly appeared at the feet of Roger and others, and were tied towards them. I don't have time to fight with you here, Roger chuckled softly, raised his hand and cut off the golden chain. If they really want to fight, the combat power of the Roger pirates at this time can completely crush the power brought by Shiji. But the problem is, this is the sky. On the Sky Island, Shiji flipped the Sky Island over in a rage. They were not allowed to fall from an altitude of 10,000 meters. What's more, Roger's health was not very good anymore. He could avoid fighting as much as possible. Don't fight. Otherwise, there is no need to steal Charlotte Lingling's road sign and historical text. Just grab it and it's over. Fighting with a difficult guy like Shiji here, I don't know how long it will last. What should I do if I get injured and die before I can get to Lofdru? So after Roger cut off Shiji's gold chain, he made a decisive decision: run. At this moment, another figure with attributes appeared in Roger's sight. Orgrim, Roger exclaimed. Before he could finish his words, Orgrim's heavy warhammer had already hit Roger with a whistling sound that broke the air. Have they really become enemies? Roger thought with some emotion in his heart. At the same time, he did not move slowly and suddenly slashed out the saber in his hand. The armed and domineering charge broke out instantly, and Shanks, Bucky and others were all thrown away. Once they get out, masters like Rayleigh and others will be fine. Gee ha 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 ha, Roger, long time no see. We didn't even get to meet each other last time at Adwal. Orgrim held the warhammer in his hand and laughed while continuing to exert force. He never expected that he would meet members of the Roger pirates here. He thought they had already been here. Roger's hand exploded, and he opened Orgrim's warhammer with a knife, and then he laughed and said, "In the past, you once said that we might become enemies and fight on the sea, so you can't drink anymore, but I didn't expect that it would come true so quickly." Maybe it's because my eyes can see through the future, Orgrim laughed. As soon as he finished speaking, his hammerhead condensed a powerful shockwave energy, and hit Roger again with the hammer. Hey, you bastard, after all, you were a friend who used to drink together, why are you so cruel? Roger turned sideways to avoid Orgrim's warhammer, and the ground collapsed instantly. Broken gold splashed everywhere, making this battle extremely luxurious. As for Shiki, they were stopped by Rayleigh and Jabba. Kojaki Odin took Shanks, Bucky, and others and started running away. Neiman, Beckman, Sphinx, Rengar, and others also began to pursue madly. For more than 400 years, it has been silent at an altitude of 10,000 meters. Sandala, the golden town in the world, also became lively at this time. Gee ha 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 ha, I've wanted to fight you for a long time. Don't run away. How about a fair and upright fight? Orgrim shouted while chasing Roger with a sledgehammer. I don't want to fight with a monster like you, and I can't beat you to death. Roger laughed and cursed, his feet speeding up. He had no intention of entangled with Orgrim. From the time Orgrim fought with Whitebeard and it was published in the newspapers. Later, many people we all know that Orgrim has some kind of immortality ability. The Navy also wants to understand a lot of things, why every time after severely damaging Orgrim, within a few days, he can do something unexpected. Something unexpected. Although more people think that Orgrim should not be able to reach the point of immortality, everyone admits that this guy's physical fitness is simply a monster. Roger also figured this out not long ago, and at this time, Orgrim was just envious and jealous and didn't want to fight with him at all. It seemed that he couldn't catch up with Roger, a bastard holding onto his sledgehammer. Orgrim suddenly threw the hammer towards Roger. Then there was another one at his feet. Accelerating, shave step, moon step, and impact force burst out together. The body shape is like anal prolapse, like a wild horse running wild. It hit Roger. The roar of the Dragon King, Orgrim punched Roger in the void from more than 10 meters away. The force of the impact turned into a giant dragon, broke free from the restraints of Orgrim's arm, and crashed into Roger at an extremely fast speed. Roger's foot suddenly stepped forward, and his figure spun around in the air. While facing Orgrim, he also slashed out with the saber in his hand. "God avoids," Roger shouted. The powerful slash instantly collided with Orgrim's Dragon King roar. In an instant, the impact was detonated and everything around him was blown away. But at the same time, Roger's slash it also broke through the smoke and dust and pointed directly at Orgrim. Sure enough, no matter how seriously ill Roger was, he still had power that was not weaker than Shiji and Whitebeard. A look of excitement flashed in Orgrim's eyes, and his arms, the power of the arm domineering force was suddenly entangled, and then a cross was blocked in front of the chest. Orgrim shouted in a low voice, "Iron Black Gold." The moment the voice fell, Roger's slash hit Orgrim's arm, and the dark arm domineering force and the power of iron burst out instantly. The powerful force pushed Orgrim back to the spot. He took 2 steps back and left several deep footprints on the ground paved with gold bricks. Then Orgrim suddenly waved his arms outward, directly deflecting Roger's slash. "Gee ha 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 ha, so happy," Orgrim laughed. Although the slash was weakened once by his Dragon King's roar, Orgrim did rely on his newly developed powerful defense to block Roger's slash. "It's a hit, isn't it? That's enough to be proud of." "Tisk, is it really a monster?" Roger couldn't help but smacked his lips and said, then without saying a word, he turned around and ran away. Orgrim also laughed. After all, he, Orgrim, will be able to brag to others in the future. "I remember back then. Old in the Sky Island, I was chasing the Pirate King Roger, but that guy didn't dare to fight me head on, he just ran away in confusion. It's a bit exciting just thinking about it."